The reason you will know where all the water supply is, you will drink from those hidden water supplies. So it's years later. When all the negative is gone, the Adullam season, now David's the king many years later. He's sitting around in the military strategy room, the war room. And David said, we'll put 1,000 soldiers here, and they'll go over there, and don't worry, there's a cave, and you can't see because of the sun's reflection, and there's a water deep inside that cave. And the guy goes, how do you know? David says, I stayed there for 3 weeks. That's a good place. And God's raising some of you up to be warrior kings and queens, whether male or female. And what is he going to do? He's not going to send you to geography school. He's going to put you in the land. He's going to show you how to get the victory by being in the conflict, not read about it and then write a book on it. He's going to let you feel the conflict and connect with him, get victory, and then tell your story to bring deliverance to others. Like, oh, Lord, I would rather just read a book about victory and then tell everybody how to get it or sing a new song about it. I don't want to go in the land. So people say, I want to be a David. Male or female, it's an anointing, it's a calling. It's a walk with God is what I'm talking about. I want to be a David, okay? You realize that if you're a David, you're going to be in the seminary of Saul. David's seminary was called Saul Seminary. David's seminary wasn't just classroom. He lived in the conflict of a demonized leader. Well, I want to be a David, but I want to be trained only in prosperity. If you are a true David, there will be demonized leaders who will oppose you. Well, I don't really want to be David. I sort of want to be David. I want David's victory. I don't want David's trouble. Well, there's no such thing. One guy told me once, well, you're like a David. I mean, you can say that to a million guys. I go, don't say that. I mean, heart, I like it. You know what that means? That's trouble. You know, years ago. Well, if you're a David, you got a seminary session coming up. But suddenly, Saul dies. David's 30 years old. The jealous king dies suddenly in battle. I mean, it shocks the nation. David doesn't have an enemy no more. The 3,000 guys that were chasing him, you're not going to believe what they told him when you read the story. The head of the 3,000 guys, Abner, he meets up with David, you know, a couple years later, and Abner says, oh, by the way, David, we were chasing you. We knew the prophecies, and we knew you were God's anointed. David goes, well, how do you figure you were trying to kill me? He goes, well, it was our job. But Abner said, we knew you were the anointed one. And David's scratching his head going, how could you attack me? He goes, we all knew, but it was our job. Sorry. That could make you mad. But you're not going to believe what David did. David opened his heart to this man, so let's be friends. You know why David didn't have a rejection spirit or a bitter spirit? He was preoccupied with another dream. You get a rejection spirit and a bitter spirit when you're preoccupied with you being the center and everybody adoring you. That's where the rejection spirit comes. When your dream, and that's the normal dream of every human being. We're born with that dream, by the way. But when our dream is to connect with God, we don't have near the vulnerability to rejection and bitterness, because when people are against us, it doesn't hurt our dream. Our dream is untouched. Nobody can touch the dream of my heart. It's to connect God. The dream of my life is not IHOP. The dream of my life happens inside of my heart with God. It's not what happens the size of conferences or at meetings. I mean, that's my assignment. My dream can't be touched. If IHOP gets real big or disappears, my dream is steady no matter what. And the same can be true of you, and the same is true of a number of you. Okay, Roman numeral 5. Now Saul's dead. Now the fourth city is Hebron. Say Hebron. And you can read which chapters are involved. And David's in Hebron for 7 years. And the reason I'm giving these 5 cities, not just because of the 5 lessons. And I have more details that I'm covering. I have them on the notes. Because my real goal is to have you leave and go, I got to read this Life of David thing. This sounds kind of interesting. I hope that's what some of you will say. But in Hebron, he's there 7 years. He's king at Hebron. You say he made it. Well, not exactly. Not exactly. Because now the jealous King Saul is dead. David has no enemies. Nobody against him. Everybody knows he's going to be king. You're not going to believe what David did. Look at paragraph B, 2 Samuel 2. This is one of the most profound verses in David's life. About David, as far as I'm concerned. The jealous King Saul died suddenly in battle. The 3,000 guys are now, they're not against David. There is nobody standing in his way for being king over all of Israel, the 12 tribes of Israel. David says, I love this prayer, but I tell you, it made his guys mad. This one prayer. He said this, Lord, David inquired, shall I go up to any of the cities of Judah? And the Lord said, go up. And he said, where? And the Lord said, Hebron. He said, now that doesn't seem very dynamic. Oh, it is. It is. David has the whole nation as his. And his guys are saying, you're king of Israel. And David says, no, maybe God doesn't want me to be the king. They go, what do you mean? He prophesied in Bethlehem you'd be king. Everybody knows it. The enemy's dead. What do you mean? He goes, no, I'm going to ask him, God, do you want me to be king? And God says, yes, but only over one area. Only Hebron, which is a city, which represented Judah, which was a region. But there's 12 regions in Israel. And God said, only be over one region. He goes, okay. He tells the guys, they go, what did God say? He goes, I'm king. They go, yay, finally, we're going to all be promoted. He goes, over one region. They go, David, stop those prayers. You're over all 12. What are you doing? We're not going to get near as much promotion if all you are is over one. He goes, you know what? I hope you get promoted. My dream isn't to be king. I want to obey God. And God said only be over 1/12. But David, nobody can even stop you right now. I don't care. My goal isn't even to be king. God said take 1/12. 1/12 it is. So David only was king over 1/12. And this is the thing. He was now being tested with partial fulfillment of the promise. Now, if you've been through a long season of testing, many guys wouldn't even ask the question. They would just assume they want all the promises right now. But David said, no, my number one connection is, my number one dream is your heart. What do you want? God said, only do a little bit of what I've promised you. And stay close to my heart. And David said, I love it. Because it's you that I want. I don't want the kingship. I want you. And I tell you, David's guys were so mad because this hurt their economics. They were already counting the money they were going to get because David was king over all 12 tribes, but it was only one tribe. So what do? When you've gone through a hard season of testing in the Adullam years, now you're at the Hebron years, but God only gives you a fraction of what he promised you. What do you do with only partial fulfillment? Many people get mad. Many people manipulate. David worshiped. David connected because it wasn't his dream to be king. And then finally, Roman numeral 6, the city of Jerusalem. Now, he was there from age 37 to 70. So he was there for 33 years in the main city. And that was the city when all of his promises, his earthly promises, came to pass in the city. But here's the most remarkable thing. I have written here in paragraph A, this is the season when we are tested with the full destiny. You think, how could you be tested with full destiny? Isn't full destiny, isn't that you scored? Isn't that it? Isn't it all about full destiny? No, it's not. It's all about full connection with God, not full destiny in terms of his earthly prominence is what I'm talking about. Because this might surprise you. David sinned far greater in the years of his full promises than he ever did in his early years, because God knew something when he was preparing him in those first 4 seasons. He knew that if he wasn't prepared right, when he had all the fame and all the glory and all the money, his heart would be far more vulnerable to the enemy attacking him. And beloved, those first